Shame guilt is the cornerstone of addiction. We have two nervous systems, one conscious and one unconscious. Shame rides on the unconscious mind, and guilt rides on the conscious mind.
Today on the podcast, we have Lois, and we're going to talk about cracking the code to the two most misunderstood emotions by examining the cycle of shame and guilt. And we're going to talk about the truth behind lies and disarming the illusion of denial and its shocking aftermath on the shame and guilt. And then we're going to talk about confronting the inner critic and understanding the roles of negative self-talk and its immense influence on addiction, and so much more. So we're in for a good episode today. And I want to welcome Lois to the show. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Luke. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Our name has the same amount of letters in it. How about that? We're a match.
Awesome. Exactly. And we both start with L. You can't go wrong. Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, it's great to be talking to you today. And just to kick us off, I just wondered if you could just tell us what your definition of shame and guilt even is.
Okay, the main thing that I would like to impart today is that we have to see shame guilt as like an entity, like a thing, rather than a nebulous situation. And that's where shame guilt is the cornerstone of addiction. And you obviously know that. And I've had family members with addiction, and I myself had some addiction. So it's very insidious how it happens. And it begins with shame guilt. And the reason I had made shame guilt a study because I had so much abuse in my childhood, and I couldn't heal until I released the shame guilt that I was carrying since 2 and 3 years old. At 50, I was dying because of the tremendous amount of guilt I was carrying, the tremendous amount of shame I was carrying, and it needs to be released. Now, the main thing is that I've come to learn that shame guilt is one particular situation. Shame makes more guilt, guilt makes more shame. Shame makes more guilt, guilt makes more shame. So to separate them makes our mind separated. Now think of a coin. A coin has heads and tails, but it's still a coin, a nickel or a dime. Oh, that's what shame guilt is. One side is guilt and one side is shame, but it's the same energy. It's the same substance. Now we have two nervous systems, one conscious and one unconscious. Shame rides on the unconscious mind, and guilt rides on the conscious mind. And that's why I call it different words, but it's the same energy.
Yeah. And like you say, it's the same entity, which is the shame and guilt, two sides of the same coin. And like you say, it's the same coin. And for you, in terms of just to rewind a bit into your life, you said you went through some abuse that caused a lot of shame and guilt in you. What were some of the experiences that you went through at a young age?
Well, I was beaten, and I was, my neck was broken. Obviously, I had a near-death experience, and broken jaws, many head traumas, and that carried on to early childhood. And when I went to school, I couldn't read because of all the brain traumas. And this is in 1950 something. So nobody knew about dyslexia at that point. And I had Erin syndrome too, where I looked at a page and all the words would move. And so the shame guilt came in when I was called an idiot child. I was unable to be taught because I couldn't read, but I couldn't read because the words wouldn't stand still because of all the brain traumas I had.
Yeah.
Which no one knew at that time. So I was put in the back of the class, and they would keep me in school, but they couldn't teach me anything because I was called an idiot child.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's very shaming.
Yeah, that sounds like a really challenging experience to go through to have all of that trauma and then to be in school as a young kid and be told that you're an idiot child. And like you say, at that level, it's not necessarily conscious. You didn't understand all this research. It wasn't all these years later. It was back then when you didn't really understand all of this. How did you make sense of that as a child? What did
I
your
don't
brain
know.
say about it?
I don't know. Um, I believe I talked with other dimensions because eventually I read and I knew things. And I think because I had a near death experience, I had that experience with other dimensions. So I came to learn that I just knew things
Yeah, yeah. And it just came
because I,
into your awareness.
right. And eventually I loved to tap dance. Like that's all I wanted to do. And I think the tap dancing put the right left brain balance in because you have to use your arms and your legs and everything. So I tap danced from about second grade all the way through high school.
Yeah,
So I did a lot of dancing.
yeah, yeah.
And I
And
think that was very healing for me.
yeah, and like you say, allowed you to sort of connect different parts of your brain by having that hobby and that passion in life and a way to express yourself, and to focus your attention, right, through movement and through having that kind of active meditation in a way of focusing your full attention on the tap dance allowed you to, start to heal.
I know it was amazing. And I started the first kidney hemodialysis unit in the United States in 1966. And I was always a trailblazer.
Yeah,
I've always done things differently, always something new. But I have always saw a need for something and nobody was doing it. So I thought, I'll do it. And that's what happened with the shame guilt situation.
yeah.
When nobody was looking at it the way I was looking at, and that way I could heal and other people could heal, then I decided that that is my mission. That's my job, is to bring that information forward.
Yeah, and how and when did you start to focus on the subject of shame and guilt? Where were you at in your life and how did you find it?
And somewhere around the year 2000, so it was about 20 something years ago. And I couldn't find any information about it, but I came to learn that the shame guilt is the cause of all our negativity. And I didn't have to go to therapy for anxiety or depression, anger. I'd be dead before I'd be well. So I just could get rid of the shame guilt that was causing the depression and the anxiety.
Yeah, yeah. So that was at the root cause. The shame and guilt was the root cause. And then if you had the anxiety and the kind of emotions there, those other emotions, and for a lot of my clients that I experience, then that then leads to addiction because they can't regulate those emotions. So they use drugs, alcohol, some kind of substance or thing to numb out those
Exactly.
emotions.
Exactly. So I came to learn that we have love energy, and love gives us so many beautiful emotions. Love gives us confidence and joy and compassion. We're intuitive, we're smart. Many, many emotions come from love. And on the other side, we have shame guilt energy. And that energy causes all our positive emotions to turn negative. See, we don't have positive emotions and negative emotions. We have an emotion that has positive and negative sides. And when the shame guilt energy comes into us by we telling ourselves we're no good, or someone tells us we're no good, the energy makes our positive emotions turn to negative ones, like compassion turns to depression,
Yeah,
intuition turns to anxiety, our passion turns to anger.
yeah. And it's really interesting, like you say, the way that it starts to manifest, the way that shame and guilt start to come up. And like you say, there's two main ways. voices from other people and voices from ourselves or in our internal self-talk. And you also, in your research, label lots of different voices of shame and guilt. And I wrote some of them down, so I'll read them out and we can talk about a few of them if you like. But you wrote
Oh,
down
sure.
yeah, I mean, one of them was procrastination, self-sabotage, sarcasm, denial, belittling, helping, emotional neglect, abuse, bullying, and passive aggressive. And they're all the voices of shame and guilt. How do you see those manifesting in people?
Well, it depends on your software. Some people will develop anxiety after they get a burst of shame, guilt, energy. Some people will get depressed. It depends on your own software, if you know
Yeah,
what I mean. And that's why shame, guilt has become so obscure because each person it affects differently.
yeah,
But that
yeah,
doesn't mean it's not the same thing. It's just that each of us are different.
yeah, yeah. It's the same source.
And
It just shows up in a different way for each person, but it's the same
exactly
source of energy.
right. So it's important for us to see shame, guilt as something. We have to identify it and isolate it from our lives, especially in addiction, because addiction breeds on shame, guilt.
Yeah, yeah,
It,
yeah,
it just is. It's the core of it.
yeah. And it creates in many ways a perpetual cycle where you then go and use and drink and use drugs, and then you feel shameful about your behavior
And then
and
you keep
guilty
on
about it, and
going
you
and
keep going, right? And it
yeah,
just creates a perpetual cycle.
you just have to take that shame, guilt and put it over there. And the energy, people call it an emotion, but it's really an energy that turns to an emotion. And
Yeah,
some of our beautiful hosts that I have got to know, they changed the name of shame guilt. They call it the shame guilt leech because it actually is a leech. It sucks our light energy away from us. See, shame guilt needs us. We don't need it. Shame guilt needs us for our light energy. But when we say no, it can't have it, then it goes away.
yeah. So it's
So
the feeding of it that keeps it alive, and it can be,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So once you understand the mechanism of it, now this is where I'm different than other therapists and people of that sort because they don't identify it as a thing, as a leech, um, or alien. People have all sorts of names for it. So you can call shame guilt anything you want. But essentially, it's an energy put upon humanity and it makes us stupid. It drains our good qualities out of us, unbeknownst to us. Now, this is why education is key to get rid of shame guilt, because you have to understand it's your only enemy. It's not your mother and your father and your grandmother and the Pope and the Catholics and the police and whoever. Shame guilt is our only enemy.
yeah, yeah. And it's like you say, comes through those voices of other people and through ourselves. And one of those voices was denial. And denial and lying is massive in addiction, right? You know, we always deny our behavior in the beginning. We're like, I'm not that bad. I'm not as bad as that person. I'm not doing those drugs. I'm not drinking that much. And we kind of shrug it off and we stay in that place of denial, and that inner self talk, from what I'm hearing you say, then feeds more of the shame and guilt. Is that right?
Exactly, exactly. We feed it by the negativity that came into us. So I think you would like to talk about the inner critic.
Yeah,
Yes, because that's really everything. Now, the inner critic is really our friend. We can't cut its head off. We can't get rid of it. It's part of us. Some people say, oh, just say no, no, no. Well, you don't make friends with somebody if you keep saying no, right, Luke? I can't,
Yeah,
if I want to be your friend, we got to talk it out, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So that's the inner critic, but the inner critic is there for us now. But the problem is that the inner critic is living in the timeline when we were 2 and 3 and 4 years old. And now we're 20, 30, 40, 50. Some of us are even more than that. So we have to bring this inner critic into our time present and say, we're not children, babies anymore. We are thinking adults. And so that's how we make friends with our inner critic. Now, we can't tell our inner critic, what to do because that's narcissistic. We have to make friends like, hi, Luke, how are you? What do you have to say to me today? And that's all very telepathically. So I help people have a conversation with their inner critic. And my film, the third episode of I'm Good Film, shows you how to talk with your inner critic, or at least it gives you a start. So the easiest way is when we hear something like, oh, you stupid person or you dumb person, say to yourself, who's talking?
who's talking? Who's talking? And
Who's
label those
talking?
thoughts. Yeah,
Who's talking? And then you may get a response and you may not, but at least you're offering a way to communicate with the inner critic, and that will get stronger and stronger over time. And
yeah,
then the inner critic is the shame guilt producer. See how important that is?
yeah.
The inner critic's job is to make you have shame guilt all the time.
Okay, so by having those negative thoughts, I'm a piece of shit, I'm just using drugs again, I missed my daughter's birthday, I fucked everything up, I threw up all over the couch again, all of this stuff's happening, you're just a piece of shit. All of these thoughts in our mind would be the inner critic just making us feel guilty. You can't control your drinking, you're hurting everyone, you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your family. Like all of these are inner critical thoughts. Is that right?
Exactly. It's a very chatty inner critic.
Yeah,
Very chatty. Now, but you have to know that the shame guilt is the only thing that the inner critic knows, because that's what the mother, the father taught, the culture taught, the religion taught, right? Isn't that what we're all taught? We're, you're in another country, I'm in this different country, but it's the same teaching. I mean, we
yeah,
get all over the place. If you don't do this, you don't do that. So that's where we have to understand that we were taught um, shame guilt. I have a book. I got it at a thrift store for like $1. It's How to Be a Jewish Mother. But that doesn't matter because I'm Polish and I have a Polish mother. But we all have had mothers and like fathers that way. So this is written, and I wanted to read something to you because this is actually written in 1960. How to how to make guilt work. I mean, like it's written.
yeah,
This is the rules. This is the rules. It's written in the book. Underlining all techniques of Jewish motherhood is the ability to plant, cultivate, and harvest guilt. Control guilt, and you control the child. Now that's written. So it's not your imagination.
yeah. It's literally written in a book how to use guilt against your kid in a way, against your child.
Exactly. And that's good motherhood.
Yeah, yeah,
It,
that's mind blowing.
right. So for you to come out and say, you know, well, this is what I did and I shouldn't have done that and did that wrong. You're only doing what you were taught. It's not your fault.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
we're
what yeah, that's
yes,
what I really want to get across.
yeah, that we're programmed from an early age for our caregivers, society, religion, that that inner critic talks the language of shame and guilt. That's the only language it's learned. So it's just feeding you all of those messages to reinforce and feed that energy of shame and guilt over and over and over and over again, just throwing fuel on the fire of that
You
shame
got it,
and guilt
Luke.
energy.
You got it. That's exactly right. So it's not the fault of the inner critic, and it's not your fault. It's the way we were raised. And you're in the UK and I'm in the USA, but we were raised the same with the shame guilt. I mean, it does, and it says that make sure your child hears you sigh every day so they know that they make you suffer. Seriously,
That's
I know.
bonkers.
I know. So when people say, "Oh, I got this other thoughts in my," you're right. You do because you were taught that way. But we know now that the inner critic is in charge. You think you're in charge of your life. No, you're not. Your inner critic is in charge. So you say, "Who's talking? Who's talking? What are you saying to me?" So you invite the inner critic to talk with you because that's how we want to become friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can't say,
Fighting.
no, no, don't use the shame guilt anymore. You can't tell the inner critic what to do. That's not how we make friends, right? You have to say, hi, how are you? What kind of ice cream do you like? What kind of food do you like? We have to become friends. I don't teach this to therapists because this is a natural way to heal.
Yeah.
So I teach you to teach your inner critic.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
I that's how I help people. I teach you. I can't teach your inner critic. You have to teach your inner critic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's your job to raise your inner critic the way you want your life to be. So eventually, you kind of barter with the inner critic like, would you like more power? And the inner critic says, yeah, 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 I want more power. And say, my inner critic is called King. He calls himself King, and he is a king. I said, I will have more power when you have more power. You can't have more power until I get more power. But for me to get more power, you have to allow me to be who Lois is. We have to stop the shame, guilt messages because they are harmful to you and to me. Now, I'm teaching you another way to live. We can live through love, not shame, guilt. Now, it isn't like one day this happens and the next day everything's fine. It takes a process, a week, 2 weeks, a month, but it's work. This is the way out. We have a way out.
Yeah.
That's the good news. There is a way. And the way is to help you befriend your inner critic and you work together. And
Yeah.
then you say to the inner, would you like a vacation? And go, yeah. Well, you don't have to babysit me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because I know about shame guilt now. And I know not to go talking to people that I know will abuse me. So I became smart. You don't have to babysit me anymore.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just logically talking. This isn't any particular rhetoric. We're just making friends with somebody that's teaching us, don't put your hand on the stove, don't go there, don't do there. But we are now adults now that no one told the inner critic that you grew up. He or she believes you're still a young kid.
Yeah. I just want to say that one more time because it's really, really important. No one told your inner critic that you've grown up. Wow. Wow.
So it's not his fault or her fault. They're still doing the job. Don't put your hand on the stove. Don't ride your bike in the street and don't do this. But no one told them it's the year 2023. You're an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like on one side we have the love energy and the positive, nice love energy. Then on the other side we have the guilt and shame energy. And in the middle we have this inner critic that we need to make friends with and learn to move it more away from feeding and throwing fuel on the fire of the guilt and shame energy and lead it gently and make friends with it so it comes more towards the love energy. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So I said, would you like a job promotion? Oh, yeah. Okay. You get a job promotion when I get a job promotion. So my king goes around the world finding wonderful hosts like Luke instead of downing me all the time because he changed his job.
Yeah, but what if you're stuck in the place where your king inner critic is going, you're a piece of shit, you can't have a job, you're nothing, you're nobody, you'll never get that job, there's no point applying, you're just a worthless piece of shit. How do you deal with that part?
Well, that's kind of typical. That's normal. That's not abnormal. And you say, thank you so much for talking to me. Because some of the inner critics won't talk to you because you're too stupid. So I'm serious. It's really quite interesting the way this works. And the only way that I was able to work with the inner critic and inner critic of with other people is that they can have more power. They can do more things and they can have a vacation. They have lots of good things happening if they allow me to have more freedom.
Yeah, yeah,
And so eventually that works. And each person with their inner critic is different. That's I do session with people and teach them the way of their inner critic, and then they talk to their inner critic for a couple weeks or a month or whatever it is, and then finally they get resolution.
yeah.
So
And
there is hope, Luke.
I'm glad that there is hope. That's amazing. And is there any specific like practice that we can do to get to know our inner critic better? Is it, like you say, talking to you? What would be some of the practices we can practically do to get to know it better?
Every time you hear a negative emotion, excuse me, a negative thought or a negative voice, say who's talking.
Yeah, yeah,
Hello, 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 hello. I mean, it's as simple as that.
yeah. So just
You don't
recognize it
never tell the critic to shut up or you're no good.
because you're reinforcing it, and then you're jumping into the game
Exactly.
and reinforcing it. Don't have
Exactly.
critical thoughts. That's a critical thought in itself.
You're exactly right. So you have to be very smart. Like I'm teaching you to be smart with your inner critic. You have to keep saying, thank you so much for talking with me. Well, I just told you a bunch of shit. Well, thank you for telling me. At least he's talking to you. Some inner critics won't talk for a while.
Yeah.
And hopefully you only have one.
Okay.
I have had people that had two. So, but
Yeah.
we,
Two critics. Are they called mum and dad?
yeah, well, whatever. But it's, we're all made up differently, but there is a way out.
Yeah.
There is a way out. And it works 100% of the time if you stay with it. And I made a movie out of discord into harmony, and it teaches you how to talk with your emotions and your inner critic.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing for everyone listening. We're going to leave all of Lois's movies, which are amazing. I've seen a lot of them in the description, so you can go there and find out all the resources
Because
in the
just,
description.
yeah, it is just like you talk to your inner critic, you talk to depression. Like when you feel depressed and anxious, you just say, you don't talk to shame guilt. Shame guilt's a leech. You don't talk to leeches. High depression, how are you? High anxiety, what is your name? We talk. I got tired of talking to therapists, so I start talking to myself. And that's how this happened. And it's
Yeah,
because that's how you're going to heal. You got to talk with yourself. And there's a way of doing that. And I help people to do that. And then they just do it on their own. It's like the inner child work,
yeah,
but it's expanded very specifically. And for addictions, I think that it's really important with the inner critic. That's
yeah,
very, very important. And it would be interesting, Luke. I think that you have group therapies with the your group. It'd be interesting for people's to have their inner critic talk in the group, and then that entices other inner critics to come out and talk.
yeah, yeah. And have you ever facilitated any groups like that? What normally happens?
I think that would be so much fun. You got to let me know how that goes.
Yeah, yeah, because I think that's another thing about like that inner critic is sometimes we think, oh, we're the only one who has it, right? This only my mind says these things, only my mind calls me a piece of shit. But really, so many of us have it, right? And it's just so normal to
Everybody
have
has an
these
inner critic.
thoughts.
And
Yeah,
if you're lucky, you only have one.
yeah,
If you only
yeah,
have one, say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you. I only have one inner critic because two is, it's tough, but you can do it. So this is how we can turn the shame guilt away from us. And it's a great start because you have the foundation of not using external drugs for coping mechanisms
yeah,
because they just they're dangerous to us, to our physical body. And shame guilt alters our emotions, clouds our mind. And that's why you get the results of like, um, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, because shame guilt has distorted your mind. Shame guilt's an energy and it distorts our physical body, it distorts our brain. Never make a decision when you're in shame guilt.
okay. Tell me a bit more about that. Never make a decision when you're in shame and guilt. What does that mean exactly?
That means like if you really got upset about something and you're doing the shame stuff and then you want to meet somebody, wait till the shame guilt clears, then talk with that person because it's going to be wrong because you're in a distorted energy field of shame guilt. You can call it anger or depression or whatever you're latching out, but that's the reason why those emotions really backfire on us because we're throwing the shame guilt that you have onto somebody else.
Okay, so you're kind of projecting it outwards.
Right. So the only thing to do with shame guilt is get away. Shame guilt only has one defect. It dissolves in detection.
It dissolves in detection.
Wow. Now you know why they don't let you talk about it because da, 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 da. So shame guilt dissolves in detection. Remember the Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, yeah,
Dorothy goes up the yellow brick road to find the Oz, all powerful, and she's shaking. She's so nervous. And she finally gets to the place where the wizard is. And what does Toto, her doggy, do? He pulls the curtain back. And what do you see? A little old man, bald and gray, with a big machine puffing green smoke. Shame guilt is only a puff of green smoke.
wow. And like you say, when you then dissolve it, that's the way to conquer it, is to see it. And once you acknowledge it and see it and make friends of it, then it starts to dissolve
You don't
and
make
lose
friends
its
with the
power.
shame guilt. You make friends with the inner critic. Now,
Yeah,
once you realize the magician is using a trick, you've seen a magician doing a trick, and then when you learn the trick, you go, ah, that's nothing. Is this a stupid trick? That's what shame guilt is. Is this a stupid trick? We've been tricked.
yeah, yeah. And is it the inner critic that's playing the trick on us?
Yes, but no, he doesn't know any better.
That's the only trick he knows. That's the only trick
That's
he's been
right.
taught in his book.
Right. And that's why he's holding on to it because that's all he's got. And then when you teach him about love and all, oh, I mean, there's other things in the world besides shame guilt. Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know that. I mean, they're very serious.
yeah, yeah,
They don't know anything different.
yeah. So we need to detect it, and then we need to acknowledge it and release it.
That's it. It
Yeah,
doesn't belong to us. People say shame guilt is normal. No, it is not normal. God did not make us shame guilt victims. It's common, but it doesn't belong to the human race. It's a puff of green smoke.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Doesn't that take the power out of it?
yeah, yeah. And it's yeah, and it's amazing. Like you say, it's a puff of green smoke, and we need to be aware of that inner critic and manage where the inner critic is focusing its attention, and start to diffuse that shame and guilt and let it go.
Exactly. Because it's just a trick. And we've been tricked all our lives to believe it's so, oh, no, it's
Yeah.
not.
And that's what causes us to use drugs and drink again and go round and round, because we're feeling all those emotions. We've woken up in our own sick and we feel shameful and guilty, and we feel like, I can't face the world. What did I say last night? What did I do last night? I can't even remember what even happened. We can barely even face the day.
Yeah. So shame guilt is really an entity, it's a thing. And it doesn't belong to the human race. That's another long story.
Yeah.
But you may want to get my book because I really, it's kind of technical, but since you're a teacher, this might be good for you. So um, if you give me your address and I'll send you one.
Yeah, awesome. That'd be really, really amazing. I couldn't find it on the UK Amazon. It didn't seem to be in stock, but if you could send me over one, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I'll send it to you because I
Yeah,
think um, you'll be able to teach, through the book, and you'll be able to help many, 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 many people. And
yeah,
it's such a mind blowing experience that we just have to be a Toto and pull the curtain back and find out it's we've been um, we've been deceived all our lives.
yeah, yeah. And like you say, we have to look at it and see it. And I mean, throughout your life, you've experienced your own kind of journeys of addiction and family members. How have you seen the intersection between shame and guilt and addiction in your own lives and the people close to you?
Yeah, and everyone is addicted to something. Um, I'm addicted to getting the message out. So I think you can use addiction for good or bad.
Yeah.
So let's not choose the drugs for addiction. Let's choose something else. But addiction, I think, is almost part of the um, human experience. But we have to choose the right things to be addicted to.
So if we learn to manage the inner critic, then we won't be
Make
so
friends with it.
make
We don't
friends with it
manage it because we don't. We kind of work together.
as a team.
I'm not as a team. We're a partner. He's
Yeah,
not ahead of me and I'm not ahead of him. But right now, I have to teach him another way, the love way, not the shame guilt way. But
yeah,
nobody ever taught him that.
yeah. Okay. So what does that look like? You're making friends with your inner critic. You're starting to acknowledge it and make friends with it and talk to it and not feed this energy of shame and guilt. And you're moving towards the love energy. What does that look like as we start to move towards that way? What's the sort of end goal that we're working towards?
And it's so, Luke, it's so natural that you don't need to know the next steps because it just automatically flows because we are always looking for health and we are designed to heal. And so once we put a healing mechanism within us, it takes its own course. So we don't have to say, now you got to do this. Now it just automatically, once we get rid of the shame guilt, we make friends with the inner critic. Inner critic is now our partner and we work together with the emotions. It automatically takes its own way, which
Yeah.
is really beautiful.
Yeah, so it's more of a natural process when we're aligned with that sort of love energy and we've made friends with the inner critic and we're not feeding the shame and guilt energy. It just naturally, we just move in that direction, like a plant
Exactly.
moving towards the sunlight. It just naturally happens.
Yeah, that's why you don't have to have, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. You don't even want to do that. That's what I'm saying. When it's a natural progression of healing,
Yeah,
you don't have to be dogmatic because your body, your mind, your heart, and your soul want to go to healing.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's the thing when it comes to drugs and alcohol, we don't want to be doing it per se. Yes, we get pleasure and we're addicted to doing it, but all of every single addict I've worked with, they don't want to be causing pain to their families. They don't want to be stuck in all of the negative consequences. They don't want to be
Nobody
there.
wants to do that. No, no, they all
Yeah,
don't. But this is a way out.
yeah,
This is a way out. And my films are all free on on the website, and I'm here to help.
yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. Like I say, it's a way out to move towards that area, which is really really good. And yeah, I mean, I wanted to go into a section. I'm going to ask you some questions
Sure.
that I wanted to ask. But before we get to that, was there anything in particular on your mind? Anything you wanted to add about the shame and guilt?
Shame guilt is not ours to own or to give. And never, never say my shame.
Okay,
Don't
okay,
own it. I don't own a monster. I don't own a leech. I mean, we have to look and see it as that. That's our only enemy. And the
yeah,
way you win is you know your enemy.
yeah. So having that like objective perspective, the shame and guilt, they say it's an entity. It's an entity. It's not ours. We don't own the shame and guilt. It's not ours to kind of keep and hug and hold on for forever. We can allow it to be its own entity and to stop feeding it energy.
Right. And we spend all our time talking with the inner critic and our other emotions. And that's how we heal.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. So I wanted to ask you some other questions that I
Right
asked
ahead.
most guests. So in
Okay.
terms of you, what was the most worthwhile investment that you made in your life? And it could be an investment in money, time, energy, or another resource. And how did you decide to make that investment?
Um, I, I I think the investment was learning about shame guilt because it changed my life. I healed. I
Yeah,
healed from all the physical problems and emotionally, and
yeah.
that's
And
the investment in knowledge.
yeah, and where did that first thought come from? Was it a book, a person, a mentor, a thing? Was it your own intuition? Where did that initial idea come
Someone,
from?
someone, I was in a group therapy, and someone said, "Lois, what do you do about shame?" And I went, "That's an odd word." This is in uh, 1998 or something. I said, "That's an odd word." Here I am, so deep in shame because of all the abuse and the other problems I've had, and I never called it what it is. Do you see the problem? And that's what we're dealing with here today with the addiction and the drugs. We have to call it shame guilt. That's what it is. And I said, "That's an odd word." Here I am loaded with shame guilt and don't even know it because I can't call it.
Yeah. So it's the first time someone in your life kind of shone a light on it to start to recognize it and start to diffuse it in a
Right,
sense. They shined a light on it.
right. And that's what I do daily with
Yeah.
people. Shine a light on it because how are you going to fix it if you don't know it exists?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And if you just let it automatically, that iniquity just automatically go for your whole life, that's, bonkers to do that. You need to
It's
start to shine a
bunkers.
light on it. Yeah.
It's bunkers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, awesome. And is there a particular quote that you think about often or live your life by?
um, that's a good one. I don't know. I follow the footsteps of Jesus.
And is there any particular quote you like from Jesus or the Bible, anything that comes to mind?
No, I
Yeah.
I like shame guilt is not ours to own or to give.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Shame is not ours to own or to give. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And you know what? That solves everything.
Yeah, yeah. Shame is not ours to own or give, and we don't
Shame
want to be.
guilt. Say
Yeah,
shame
shame
guilt
guilt.
is
Shame
not
guilt
our.
is not ours to own or give. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
We could
And
change the world with
yeah,
that one quote.
yeah. That would be
There wouldn't be
amazing.
any wars.
Yeah. And when it comes to other people, how do we manage that shame and guilt if we are programmed to have that internal dialogue, and then sometimes we find ourselves shaming or guilt tripping other people. If it's maybe a family member of an addict saying you shouldn't drink that much, look at how
This is
stupid, look at what you did. How does that side of things work?
Well, by you teaching your inner critic not to shame you, you learn what shame guilt is and how you shame yourself and you shame others. It's a natural process. Now, if you like, you can sign up for my newsletter, and it's a book, 500 questions, one answer. So I teach you 500 ways you can shame guilt yourself or shame guilt other people, or other people shame you. And
Yeah,
sometimes when I'm talking on the cell phone and they're talking words that I don't want to hear, I just go, don't take it, don't take it.
yeah, and you just brush it away, and you don't let it into your mind, into your
Awareness.
space, yeah, into your awareness. Yeah,
But I had to get to the point what I have to know what is shame guilt, because I didn't even know what words they are, because they were so normal to me as
yeah,
they're normal to everybody else. So the book is important to have, and it's every week you receive a couple of excerpts of it. So it
yeah,
teaches you what shame guilt is, and you don't want to use it on yourself or other people.
yeah,
It's all,
exactly.
this is all education.
Yeah, you don't want to feed that energy in yourself or anyone. You just want to feed that energy into its own. You don't want to feed that energy just entirely for yourself or for anyone else.
And then when someone says really something stupid, dumb like that to you, say, that's interesting. You can't say that's, just give it back and say, well, that's interesting. It's non-committal. Just
Yeah,
say, well,
just
that's interesting. And my kids, they used to say, can you say that another way?
yeah, yeah, and just uh, take the power out of it.
Exactly, diffuse it.
Yeah, yeah, no, amazing, amazing. So as we come towards the end, we've mentioned in the episode, your book and also your movies, as well as your newsletter that people should go and join. Did you have any final thoughts? Anything else on your mind, or anywhere you'd like people to go?
Be a Toto. Pull the curtain back.
Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Lois. It's been amazing.
And keep in touch.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke.
No worries. Okay, cheers, Lois.
Okay, bye.
All right.